Дорогие друзья, я рад приветствовать вас на новом подкасте Международного клуба народного единства «Лицом к лицу» с Александром Казаковым. Александр Казаков – это я. А в гостях у нас сегодня известный американский подкастер Рэйчел Блевинс из Техаса, с которой мы сегодня обсудим очень бурно начавшийся 2026 год
for what
и
has
что
launched in
там натворил
2026
их президент.
and what their president has done so far.
В этой связи, значит, Рэйчел, у
So,
меня сразу
in
первый
this
вопрос
connection, I would
с
like to ask a first
рассуждением.
question with a discussion. Let's
По
launch
мнению
into
многих
discussion.
наблюдателей, с
Onto the
которыми я
point
тоже
of view on the
согласен,
many people who watch and
своими
listen to
действиями
us, and
именно в
they
этом году,
with the
начиная
actions
с
that
похищения
President
президента
Trump
Венесуэлы
has, starting from
Николаса
kidnapping
Мадуро,
Nicolas Maduro.
американский президент Дональд Трамп
American President
запустил
Donald Trump has
новый
launched
этап
a
в
new stage
развитии
in the developing
международной
of
политики.
international
То, о
politics.
чем раньше
What
много
we've
говорили, как о
didn't even
времени
talk about earlier or just
анархии в
discussed with the
международной политике,
anarchy and
о
the international
хаосе. Ну вот,
chaos or
собственно, анархия и
disorder.
наступила.
That's what we have now. It
Э,
looks like it.
Хорошо понимаю, как это
I
воспринимается у
understand
нас.
very
И
well how we
об этом
perceive it
позже
from our
скажу. Я
side,
хорошо
right?
понимаю, как
I
это
can share
воспринимается
later,
в
but
Европе.
not, I understand a
Но
little bit
мне
how it's
очень
perceived in
интересно,
Europe, but
как
I am very curious
такой
how
новой модели
such new
поведения
model
в
of
мировой
behavior
политике
in
американского
world
президента относится в
politics,
Америке. Вас это
how
не
do they take
пугает?
it, this behavior of American president? Aren't you scared?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's great to be here. And yes, it is incredibly alarming to be an American right now and to watch what the US government is doing both at home and abroad. And I think it's a big wake-up call for all Americans, especially because Donald Trump ran on these promises of no new wars, right? He insisted he was going to solve the conflict in Ukraine in 24 hours, that he was not going to pursue more and more endless wars. And then he gets into office and he hasn't even been in office 1 year, right? January 20th will be 1 year since he was inaugurated. And already he has continued the proxy war against Russia. He has bombed Iran. He has carried out numerous attacks around the world. Oh, and as you were noting there, he started 2026 off by kidnapping the sitting president of Venezuela. I mean, watching that happen in real time, it is incredibly concerning that the US thinks that they can just parachute into another country and capture their sitting leader and then tell everyone, oh, well, we thought he had machine guns or we thought he had, various illegal drugs here in the US, and that is somehow an excuse for it. And I think that you're seeing the US government kind of figure it out now where they initially went into Venezuela. It seems like with some sort of a plan that they were going to put in their own puppet, that they were just going to install the government that they wanted. And then they very quickly realized that that was not going to happen. And now they're in this place of trying to figure out what to do next, with Trump now openly threatening Iran once again. I mean, watching this happen, I'm going, okay, this is the guy who on New Year's Eve told the world that his resolution for this year was peace on earth. And so far, just a couple of weeks into the new year, he is pursuing more and more endless war, while also being in a position where, and I think that a lot of Americans are watching this play out and kind of not knowing exactly what to do or what they can do when it comes to what in the world their government is doing overseas. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans have just checked out completely, while others still are kind of looking at the broad spectrum of this and going, okay, where does this go? How many wars are we going to see in this new year?
Вот интересно,
That's very
мы
interesting.
сейчас находимся
Right now,
в
we
таком
are in
положении,
such a position where
вот
we
мы в России по
in
отношению к
Russia
Соединенным Штатам,
towards
как,
in
наверное,
relation to United
американцы
States, like
относились к тому, что
Americas
происходило в
were treated
Советском
what
Союзе примерно в
took place
85 году прошлого
in Soviet
века при
Union in
Горбачеве.
1985 of the last century, right? You
То
were
есть
guys
мы
watching,
смотрим с
so
интересом,
we are watching with
что у вас
interest.
происходит,
What takes
мы
place,
анализируем.
we analyze,
Самое интересное,
and
что у нас тоже
most
мнение
interesting saying that we also
разделяются.
have
Есть
different
большая
opinions.
часть
A
общественности,
majority
которая
of
считает,
people and
что
society, they
Трамп
think that Trump
обманщик,
is a liar,
что все его
that
разговоры перед
what he spoke
выборами
about
были
before election were
таким
just
туманом войны,
fog
которым
before the
он
war,
ввел всех в заблуждение,
that
а на
he
самом
gonna
деле
lie to
не
everybody about,
поменялось
but
ничего.
realistically nothing has
Но
changed.
чем отличается
But the
похищение
difference
Николаса Мадуро
of
от
kidnapping of
похищения
Nicolas Maduro
Нарьеди?
from
Ну,
Nayede's
только количеством жертв.
kidnapping. That's
Вот,
the
собственно,
number
и
of
все.
people, number of
Уже
casualties.
похищали и до
That's it.
Трампа президентов
Before
другой
Trump, the
страны и
people were
судили их.
kidnapped from
Но,
other countries
правда,
and were judged.
я отношусь к другой
But I
категории
think I would rely
аналитиков в
myself onto the
России, и
other
мне
part
кажется,
of
я понимаю,
people in
чего
Russia. I
хочет
think
Трамп.
what I understand
И
what
более
Trump
того,
might
мне кажется,
desire.
что Трамп
I think that Trump
стратегически никого не
strategically
обманывает.
is not lying to anybody.
В понимании
In
Трампа война
understanding of the
это как было в
Trump's
Ираке.
war, it was like in
То
Iraq.
есть заходит американская
Here comes the
армия,
American
продвигается на
army
сотни
moving
километров к
forward for
столице
hundreds of
государства,
kilometers to the
все
capital of the
разносит вокруг
region. They
себя.
blow off everything
А
around.
то, что он делал сейчас,
And what
это
they've done
такие
now,
точечные
it's
хирургические
pinpoint
операции,
surgical
которые, на взгляд
operations
Трампа,
that, as Trump sees
не
that,
начинают войну,
they don't
а
launch the
ее
war,
предотвращают.
but they prevent the
Так
war.
мне это видится.
This is
И
how I
вот
see it.
меня лично Трамп не обманул.
Myself personally, Trump didn't
Просто
lie to me,
когда он
but
год назад говорил
1 year
про
ago,
Канаду,
when he said
про
Canada,
Панаму и про
Panama,
Гренландию, все
Greenland,
смеялись, и я
everybody was
говорил, не надо
laughing.
смеяться, он это
And
говорит
I was saying,
серьезно,
please
он
don't laugh.
собирается
He's very
это
serious
сделать.
about that. He will
Ну,
do it.
собственно, он сейчас это и делает. Но
And that's
еще раз,
exactly what he
важно
does. But important
понимать, что
note that
мы
we
смотрим
need to
это,
understand.
ну, как в
We
телевизоре.
look at it as in a
Я
TV
почему
show.
начал с вопроса,
And
как вы
that's
это
why
переживаете,
I
вы-то там
ask you, how
внутри
do you perceive it?
находитесь, и
You're
это
there,
для
right
вас
inside, right in the
опасность.
middle. And
В
it's a
данном
kind of a
случае не для
danger for
нас.
you, for
Мы
your
как раз,
nation.
Дональд Трамп хочет
For us,
получить во
Donald Trump
владение
wants to
западное
get
полушарие.
to
Да
his
ради
private
бога,
property,
мы-то
the
в
Western
восточном
Hemisphere.
полушарии
Okay, we're in
находимся.
Eastern one. So
А вот, правда,
it's
тут с
kind of,
Ираном будут
but
проблемы.
we might have some problems with
Ну вот
Iran.
вы сказали про Николаса
But
Мадуро,
you were speaking about
а
Nicolas
ведь
Maduro,
знаете,
and you know,
ничего не закончилось.
nothing is finished.
Потому что
It's not
на
over yet.
сегодняшний день, я слышал
Because for
одно из
today,
ваших выступлений
yes,
вот в
I've heard
новогодние дни
one of
как
the
раз по
speeches
Венесуэле.
that you gave on
Они у
Venezuela
нас
about the New
выходят на
Year.
русском
And we
языке.
do have them in
Кстати,
Russian
ваши
here.
подкасты, мы их
Your
тоже слушаем.
podcast, we do have them in Russian
И
language in Russia.
вы там
And
резонно
you
говорили
have
про
reasoned there quite
войну,
well about the
похищение и
war,
тому
about
подобное. А ведь
kidnapping, and
смотрите,
etc.
суд над Мадуро еще не
But
начался.
the judge,
Он
the
начнется
judgment
в
of
марте
Maduro hasn't
месяце.
launched. It started in March.
Обвинение, и это вы говорили как раз, что
What you were
придуманное
saying
кем-то
is that
картель
somebody
Солнц, которого нет.
came up with
Но это же обвинение, которое ему
charge.
предъявляют. И это
It
суд в
really doesn't
Нью-Йорке,
exist. And it's in
который, мягко
court in New
говоря,
York
не
that,
очень хорошо
and
относится к
soft
Трампу.
words, they don't really
И
treat
я
Trump
вообще не
well.
исключаю,
So
что этот
what
процесс
I don't take out of the
Мадуро и
picture
его
that this
супруга
process over Maduro
выиграют
and his
в
wife would be
суде
won,
в
could be
Нью-Йорке.
in New York,
И,
in a
и
in a
Соединенные
court of
Штаты
state of New
вынуждены
York.
будут его отпустить.
And United
Я
States
не
will have
исключаю
to
такой
release him.
вариант.
I don't take that
А что касается самой
chance
Венесуэлы,
out of
смотрите,
the play
сколько
game.
времени уже прошло. А что
Look at how much
поменялось в
time has
Венесуэле?
passed. What has changed in
В
Venezuela?
Венесуэле у власти правительство Мадуро.
There's still Maduro's
В
government in
Венесуэле
power.
массовые митинги в
There's
поддержку
massive
правительства и с
protests
требованием
to
вернуть Мадуро
support
на
government
месте.
and bring Maduro back.
И
And
Госдепартамент США
State
призывает
Department,
граждан Соединенных Штатов Америки
they're calling for
покинуть территорию Венесуэлы.
citizens of
Это
United
было,
States
если
to
не
leave
ошибаюсь,
Venezuelan
вчера.
territory. I think yesterday such
То есть,
announcement came
где
out.
победа
So
Трампа?
where is that victory
А я
of
ее не
Trump?
вижу.
I don't see that. I really don't see it.
А вы?
What about you?
Yeah, I think that that's a really great point. And you really summed it up when you noted this is the Trump reality show because he always does this. He goes in, he gets the US into a mess, like what he did when he decided that the US was going to start bombing Yemen again. And then all of a sudden you have Trump backpedaling when he has made an agreement with the Houthis or with Ansar Allah in Yemen, and he's acting as though they capitulated, right? When in reality, Trump just agreed to the same ceasefire agreement that they had been offering him for weeks. Now you have Trump in this position where he's trying to convince the public that the US has won in Venezuela. I don't know exactly what winning would look like, but he's trying to convince the public that, oh, Venezuela has agreed to give us all of their oil and we're going to make all of this money off of that oil. And then they're going to take that money and they're going to buy all of these products that were made in America. And I'm looking at that and I'm going, okay, well, first of all, exactly as you noted, the Venezuelan government is still very much intact. You have Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, who has now assumed the role of interim president. Nothing has really changed aside from the fact that Nicolas Maduro is not there. Second of all, Venezuela has never refused to work with anyone. They've never told the US, we will never work with you, right? Even though the US was hitting them with all of these sanctions, they just want it to be mutually beneficial and they want to be able to sell their oil on their own terms, which they are absolutely entitled to do so. But then you have the fact that Trump has to take this and he has to try to make it look one way to the public. But you have Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores now in the Southern District of New York court. And every video and image that we've seen of them, where you've seen Maduro giving a thumbs up, you've seen him saying, hello, good night in English, and really kind of playing it up to the public, letting them know that he is not this violent narco terrorist that the US branded him as, right? The US tried to convince the world that Nicolas Maduro was the most dangerous world leader out there. And so it's really interesting for the public now to kind of get to see, oh, this is what Maduro and his wife actually look like. And why are we going after them? Because the Justice Department did release the documentation for their indictment, but it read like their airing of grievances, right? It read in such a way as they were saying, oh, Nicolas Maduro is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. And you look at that and you go, okay, well, why isn't he the legitimate president? Oh, because the US has decided that he's not, because the US has decided that every Venezuelan election, when you have all of these various international observers there on the ground to see how it is run, that none of those elections are legitimate and that Maduro should not be in office. But you also look at the fact that the US answer to this quote unquote problem, right, of how do we solve the Venezuelan government up until this point has been Maria Corina Machado, this woman who is no stranger to the US establishment. She was pictured shaking hands with George W. Bush back in 2005, and she's kind of been in waiting in the shadows, right, hiding out in Madrid, I believe, is where she's in exile, and she's in this position where she's waiting for the US to parachute her in. But then, as the US is carrying out this operation to kidnap Maduro, you have reports that the CIA at least kind of told Trump, hey, if you try to force Maria Corina Machado onto Venezuela, it is going to be a complete disaster. A lot of people are going to die, and the US military is going to have a constant presence in Venezuela. Not just the CIA right now, right, where they've carried out all of their covert operations. No, it is going to have to be boots on the ground. And the US doesn't want boots on the ground, right? They do not want to go into Venezuela and for it to become another Vietnam. And that's really why they have changed. And we've seen this massive transition going back to the Obama administration, where they turned to drone wars. They figured out that they could carry out strikes and that they didn't have to have boots on the ground, and that they would be able to really put the American public in a position where they are so desensitized from what their government is doing overseas. I mean, the media here in the US, they never show the American people what the aftermath of a US drone strike looks like. So the US is over here, they're bombing Yemen, they're bombing Somalia, right? They're bombing Syria. The American people have no idea what that looks like for the innocent civilians on the ground, not even to get into all of the support that the US has given Israel and Gaza to target the Palestinians. And I think with the situation with Venezuela, it's even more interesting because you realize that now the Trump administration has gotten themselves so far into this that, yeah, there really is no winning here. The only thing that they can hope for, which it does seem like Trump is trying to achieve, is to convince the American people that they are going to get access to all of this oil and that somehow that is a win for the country. Meanwhile, you already have Trump in this position where he's trying to distract the American people. He's looking over here at Iran and really preparing for the next endless war to kind of drag the American people into. And he definitely doesn't want anyone to talk about how he hasn't been able to quote unquote end the war in Ukraine and he hasn't been able to try to force Russia into some sort of a deal that would be bad for them in the end or would allow NATO to freeze the war there. So when you look at what Trump has accomplished over the last year, it's really not much. And I think it goes back to the point that you made. It's more and more of the same with just kind of Trump packaging it as if he has achieved something new for the American people.
Ну, спасибо
Thank
за
you,
это
Rachel.
объяснение.
Thank
Мне
you
было
for
важно
this
понимать, видят ли это
explanation.
американцы,
It was
потому
important
что
for me to
у
understand
нас-то,
the point of
конечно,
view of real
другой взгляд и
Americans. We
другой
have a different point of
запрос.
view. We
Нам-то
have a different
интересно,
request.
что для нас
It's
сделал
interesting
Трамп,
for us
потому что
what Trump did
мир все
for
равно
us,
един,
and
и Соединенные Штаты Америки и
we
Россия
understand that
так
the
или иначе все равно
world is
каждый
still
день влияют
united,
друг
both
на друга,
US
и
and Russia. We
поэтому
still
мы с большим
influence each other in a
интересом за
great
этим
way,
наблюдаем.
and we're greatly
Но
watching
вот
it.
вы
But
уже тоже об этом сказали, я бы
you have
еще одну
said
тему
that
хотел
one
затронуть.
more topic I would like to discuss with you.
Действительно,
Truly,
конкретных
truly,
результатов,
we don't
вот чтобы
see the
можно было
real
список
fruits,
прям
a
вот
whole
назвать,
list of things that
не
Trump would
видно
accomplish,
в
like you've
деятельности
mentioned.
Трампа за
We
один
don't see
год.
that.
Но если говорить
But
не
if
о
we speak
конкретике,
about not a
а если
particular
говорить о
things, but
принципах
if we talk
международной
about
политики,
principles of
то
international
он
politics,
изменил очень много.
he has changed a lot,
Меня,
he
конечно,
greatly
то есть,
changed this.
меня это
For myself, I was
удивило
surprised.
не само по
I
себе,
was
а
surprised not just
скорость, с
like
которой
itself,
он это
but the
сделал.
speed
Ведь по большому счету
that he
он
was so
отменил
fast.
международное право.
He just canceled the international law in a big deal,
Международное
right?
право больше
International law
не является
is
тем
not anymore
фундаментом,
as a
опираясь на
fundamental
которых
that
можно
based on
что-то
which
решать.
something can be
Он
solved.
теперь, то есть Трамп теперь
Now
апеллирует
Trump
к
appeals
внутреннему
to the
моральному чувству.
internal moral
Вот,
code,
чувству
feeling,
справедливости, вот,
emotion,
он
the
же так
feeling of
сказал.
justice.
Что такое
That's what he
международное
said.
право? Вот
What's
мое
international law?
внутреннее чувство.
I look at what I
Может
think
быть, это
is
не так
right.
плохо,
Maybe it's not that
но это
bad.
зависит от человека.
But
У
of course, it
каждого
depends on the
человека
human
моральное
factor.
чувство внутри
Each
разное.
person
Есть
on their
злодеи,
factor, some they're
у которых,
evil.
мягко говоря,
They
моральное
say
чувство
that their morals are
повреждено внутри.
crooked.
И в любом случае,
But in any case,
если Трамп будет продолжать
if Trump
действовать так же
continues
в
to
отношении
act the
международного
same way
права,
towards international law,
то уже в этом году
I think this
мы
year
все,
we could
весь
have,
мир,
all of us,
потому
the
что
whole
США
world,
остаются самым могущественным государством
because
в
still
мире,
United States is the most
весь мир
powerful country. The
окажется в
whole world
ситуации, когда
will
у
be in a
нас нет
situation
даже
where
никакой
we
общей
don't even
платформы. Вот
have
мы
a
сейчас,
common
Рэйчел, с вами
platform.
разговариваем.
For example, we talk
У
right
нас
now,
есть
right? We
две
have
общие платформы.
two
Есть
common
технологическая,
platforms. We have technological
которая
platform
обеспечивает связь,
that as an
и
instrument gives us the
есть
connection
определенная моральная
and gives
платформа, потому
a certain
что мы
moral
хотим
platform because we
разговаривать и
want to
хотим
talk.
понять друг
We
друга. То
want
есть
to
нам
understand
есть
each
на
other.
что опираться.
We have something that we
Но
stand on.
страны
But the
с
countries with
противоположными
the
интересами,
opposite interests
которые противоречат друг
that are
другу
going against
вплоть
each
до
other
состояния войны,
up to the
если
point of
им не на
war,
что
if
опираться,
they have
на
no
что-то общее,
fundamentals, they don't have a ground under their feet,
то тогда
then
все проблемы
Everything,
будут
problems, all the
решаться в
problems
кулачном бою.
will be solved in a fist fight.
Получается так.
Is that what
Потому
we're
что
gonna
если
have?
Трамп
Because
отменяет международное
if
право, тогда
Trump
почему
cancels
Россия, почему
international law,
Китай,
then why
почему
China, why
Иран
Russia, why
должен
Iran
следовать
should
международному праву?
follow international laws?
Но это нечестно.
That's not fair.
Давайте тогда,
So
значит, если
let's then,
Соединенные
for
Штаты
example, if
захватывают
United States
чужой
would
танкер
take
под
over
чужим
a
флагом,
certain vessel under
но
a
это
foreign
предоставляет
flag, then
возможность нам
it gives an
захватывать
opportunity, gives
американские
us an open
танкеры
door to take over
под чужими
American
флагами.
vessels under foreign flags.
Но в ответ на это Трамп скажет,
As an answer.
не-не-не-не, наши
But Trump will
нельзя.
say, no,
А
no, 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 you
почему?
can't take our vessels, our boats.
Почему
Why
ваши
not?
нельзя?
Why can't we?
Потому что град на холме.
Because you're sitting on a
И
hill.
в этом смысле, конечно, Трамп
And
запустил процесс
that's Trump
во
launched the
всем мире
process in the whole world
невероятно
of
опасный.
very
То
dangerous
есть мы
process that
все,
we are
в данном
all
случае и в России, и в
in Russia,
Китае,
in
и в
China,
Индии, и в
in
Иране
India,
одинаково с
Iran,
американцами,
together with
оказываемся в
Americans. We
ситуации,
are in a
когда,
position where
когда кто сильный, тот и прав.
the strongest would win.
А в отношении силы, я думаю, как
And I
минимум
think
Россия и
concerning the
Китай могут
strength,
поспорить
Russia and China can have an
с
argument
Соединенными
here
Штатами,
with the
кто
United States.
сильнее.
Who is the
Вот не
strongest
кажется ли
one?
вам, во-первых, не кажется ли
First of all,
вам, что
so
мы
don't you think,
вступаем в эту эпоху
as first
опасного
thing, it's a
хаоса?
dangerous epoch
Это
of
первое. И
dangerous
второй вопрос
chaos? And
сразу.
two, next question
А,
comes in.
Не кажется ли, Рэйчел, вам,
Do you
что
not,
вот то,
don't you
что мы
think
сейчас
that
с вами
what
делаем,
we're
и то, что
doing
мои
right now,
коллеги
and my
вот на
colleagues are
платформе
doing at the
Международного клуба
platform of the
народного
People's
единства делаем,
Unity Club, what we're doing
разговаривая
here, talking with
с аналитиками и с
analytics
подкастерами из
and
других стран,
podcasters from
может
different
быть, это
countries,
единственное,
maybe
на что
that's
можно
the
будет
only
опереться завтра, на то, что
fundamental, the
мы
only
в
ground that we
горизонтальном
can stand
режиме
on,
разговариваем друг с
that we
другом.
talk to each other, that we discuss questions. Let us know.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what you're doing here is so important because so much of what the US has tried to do is to convince the American people that Russia is the enemy, that China is the enemy, that Iran is the enemy. And for many Americans, they go, okay, I'll listen to my government. It's easier that way. I won't question it. But when they do start to look around and they go, why can't I go to Russia? Why can't I go to China? Why can't I explore the world that we live in? Is it because those countries are preventing me? No, it's because the United States is preventing you by
Да.
trying to keep you in this bubble, right? Trying to force you to only look inward and not to look at the world around you. And it is extremely concerning to me to see the position that the US is in right now, especially because, exactly as you noted there, the US is picking a fight that it can't win, right? For so many years now, the US, at least in this century, has been the bully of the world. They decide that they are going to invade Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria, and many countries around the world had to just kind of go along with it because what are they going to do? Stand up to the United States, right? Fight a proxy war in another country. Well, the US was able to do what it wanted, but now we've started to see the rise of the multipolar world. We've started to see countries like Russia and China and Iran come together and say, no, international law is incredibly important to us, and it's also important that the US needs to follow it. But we still remain in this place where the US does still have power. If they want to go into Venezuela and kidnap the sitting leader, they have shown that they can do that. But it does get extremely worrisome when you watch the United States in this place where, yes, it is seizing oil tankers because it wants to, because it can, and now putting Russia in a position where they have to respond. And when I look at Trump, I know that he does not like to lose. And I know that he has tried to frame the war in Ukraine as Biden's war, right? To tell the world that this is not Trump's war. But now we're 1 year in, and it is Trump's war. It is Trump's war that he is now losing. And there's nothing he can do about it. There's nothing that NATO can do to change the balance of power on the battlefield in Ukraine. There's nothing that they can do to force the Russian economy to fall apart or to force Russia and China to stop working together. And so, because the United States can't do anything, then it starts to act out. Then it gets desperate. Then it gets even worse and worse because, exactly as you said there, the US does not see international law as something that it has to follow. It sees the international rules-based order where the US makes the rules and the US expects every other country to follow their orders instead of it being something which it should be, right? A platform where we all collectively look at it and say, okay, this is international law. These are the rules that we are going to follow. The United States has refused to do that. And so as we get into 2026, I am very concerned about what the US will do to try to distract from the fact that it is losing, right? I'm concerned that it is going to carry out another attack on Iran, that it is going to get further and further into these various wars to try to take away from the fact that it can't beat Russia and it also can't have a war with China. And that's another big thing that so many of the politicians within the establishment have desperately wanted for decades now has been a war against China because they see China as this major rising competitor. They see China and Russia working together, and they want to not only go after China, but to go after all of China's friends, which is what they have done. But you're now seeing the US in this position where when Trump tried to launch this ridiculous trade war with China last year, where he said, okay, we're going to come up with tariffs that are over 100%, Beijing looked at the US and they said, okay, well, we're going to cut off our supply of rare earth minerals, right? We are going to target you where it actually hurts you to show you who has the power here. The result of that was that the US had to back down. Trump had to back down. And so, watching the US in this position, they are an empire. They are also becoming increasingly desperate. And I think that is when things become increasingly dangerous for the world as a whole, not even to mention the fact that the US is now just weeks away from the last remaining nuclear treaty with Russia being set to expire, with the New START treaty coming to an end. And the United States does not seem concerned about that. And that to me is incredibly worrisome because the last thing that any of us want to see is a nuclear arms race and us getting further and further into the danger of World War III becoming even more official than it is right now.
Ну да, вы,
Yes,
Рэйчел, правильно
yes,
вспомнили
Rachel.
про
Correctly.
договор
You
о
have remembered
стратегических
correctly
наступательных
concerning about
вооружениях,
the
который вот в
strategic
феврале
weapons
заканчивается.
that this contract, this
Но, с
treaty
другой
about the
стороны,
nuclear weapons that we
я
have
бы через
finishing in
него
February.
предложил
And
выйти еще на одну тему.
one more topic
Трамп же
follows
сказал,
that treaty.
что,
The Trump said that,
заканчивается и
well,
заканчивается,
it's going to be over
но он
with,
добавил, что мы
but he
подпишем
added that we will
другой,
sign
который
another
будет
treaty
еще лучше.
that would be a better treaty.
И, по крайней мере, мы в Москве
And
знаем,
at least we know here in
что для
Moscow that
этого, чего от нас хочет Трамп для того,
what
чтобы
Trump
подписать
wants from
другой
us
договор
to sign
об
another
ограничении
treaty
ядерных вооружений,
concerning cutting
который
their
будет
nuclear
лучше.
weapons.
Он хочет,
That would be a
чтобы
better one.
Россия
They want
пригласила
us,
в этот
Russia,
договор
to
Китай.
invite China in that
Потому
treaty.
что сама Америка не
Because
может пригласить
America
Китай.
cannot
Китай
invite China.
отказывается
China
разговаривать
doesn't
об
want to
этом.
talk to United
И
States.
они рассчитывают на то, что
And
Россия
they
пригласит.
count that
Но
Russia
вот
would
отсюда у
invite.
меня как
So
бы
here
и
we have
следующая тема.